Alright, what's good everyone? In this video I'm going to be talking about the Z Fold 6's cameras and how it does with kids and pets. A lot of people have been saying that Samsung phones have been trash at taking photos of kids and pets, so I just want to share my experience with this newest phone and give you some examples of how it does, especially compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I got some quick examples, so let's get into it. So first things first, we have a picture. This is in the elevator. It has some bright lights, but it's not the best lighting because the lights are not that close to the subject, and as you can see, my daughter is kind of close to the camera. The Z Fold 6, it's able to focus more closer with the subject being closer to the camera than the iPhone, so I think it looks a little bit better, and because the subject has to be further away from the iPhone. Going to the next shot, so this is just me taking photos, rapidly in real time, not really thinking about like framing, stuff like that, just trying to get pictures of her and just to see how the phone performs, because it's commonly talked about how Samsung phones, struggle with like moving subjects and stuff like that, lower lighting. And as you can see here, it's kind of blurry. There is a lot of noise right here in the image. But for the most part, when you zoom out, I feel like it's alright. It's pretty comparable to the iPhone's image, but the iPhone definitely does capture her in more detail and, more still, less motion in the frame. Alright, so the next photo, and she's looking up now at the camera, and I think both of them are pretty comparable. Obviously, if you zoom in, the iPhone's going to have more details because it is a better camera system overall. But you see there's still motion blur in the iPhone's image as well. So like iPhones and Pixels, they're generally praised for being phones that can take pictures of kids and pets, especially in lower lighting. In my experience, I don't feel like the Z Fold 6 is inadequate, and I don't feel like I need to go and grab an iPhone or grab a Pixel to take good pictures of kids and pets, even in lower lit situations. I feel like it's just fine. Like this image right here is good enough. I feel like this is, this is decent. It definitely has more noise in the iPhone's image. I think that's just the issue with the Z Fold cameras this year in general. But overall, I feel like this is a good detailed image, and I could definitely use this, post on social media. I can edit it, I can do whatever I want. It looks pretty decent to me. But the iPhone's image, like I said, it's going to be a little bit better, although it does have more motion blur, like I showed you in the forehead area. All right, so this is another shot, and so she moved again, and I feel like it's a pretty good shot for both of them. The iPhone's image is gonna look cleaner, of course, because it is a better camera system. Overall, it has more detail in the frills of her dress and the texture and stuff like that. Z Fold 6, if you zoom in, you're gonna see the noise. Even when you're not zoomed in, you can still see the noise in these areas right here. So that's definitely something that Samsung needs to fix with the software. The denoising needs to be better. But overall, these images, like I said, are pretty decent. This is not the best lighting, and I feel like both phones did a good job, but the iPhone is definitely going to show that it has a better camera system. But that's not necessarily the point of this comparison. The point is to show how the Z Fold 6 performs, and whether it's good enough or whether it's terrible, and especially compared to the iPhone, which is regarded as one of the best camera phones on the market for point and shoot. So now we got a different shot, and my daughter's holding my wife's hand and they're walking, and this is just me taking pictures again, just shooting and seeing what the cameras can do. And again, I think this is pretty comparable in terms of quality. I actually think the Z Fold 6 captured less motion, like it looks more crisp and clear in terms of motion blur. As you can see right here with the bag, it looks like there's some motion blur on the iPhone. Doesn't look as sharp as it normally does. You can see there's like no detail in my daughter's face, but with the Z Fold 6, it's pretty decent. Obviously there's gonna be more noise. I feel like the image is captured better in terms of like the motion. It looks sharper. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this image right here. The next image, again, this is just me just shooting back to back, and it's not exactly the same in terms of like what they captured, but honestly it's all up to the cameras, and I feel like the Z Fold 6 just did a better job here with capturing her in motion. And even especially with her eyes, you can see they're closed in the iPhone's image, and again it's just blurry, whereas the Z Fold 6 a little bit sharper. Her eyes are open. Zoomed out, it's okay. Zoomed in, you can see some noise, but I feel like it's a decent image overall. And then we have another shot, different angle. I think the iPhone did better here, but again, the bag is just really blurred out, and I don't think it's the depth of field. I think it's just not capturing the bag well in this moving shot, and there's just less details. Her skin is like very smoothened out. Like the iPhone is really, it's trying its best to capture this image, whereas here it looks, I think the Z Fold 6 just looks sharper. The image looks better, more captured, and it's more in focus. And my daughter is actually still in the Z Fold 6's shot versus the iPhones. I think it just did a better job retaining all of the details. But this also comes down to preference. So the iPhone's image is more smoothened out. The Z Fold 6's image is more sharp. So which one do you prefer? And of course there is going to be the noise and stuff like that, but this is just what you have to expect. Zoomed out, the noise is not that bad. It's only when you zoom in. All right, so now moving on to pets. So this is my bunny Kusu, and I took a picture with both these phones using portrait mode actually, so you can see the artificial blur falling off of her and just see how both of them did. And this is not good lighting at all. Like the lighting lighting in my apartment is pretty bad. But I feel like Z Fold 6 captured some decent details right here. You can see in her paw some decent details. It looks pretty sharp, and of course if you zoom in it's gonna look blurry and fuzzy. It's not gonna be the sharpest, but the cutout is pretty good. I can't lie, the cutout looks pretty decent, follows the line of her ears pretty well. Overall, it's a decent little photo right here. The iPhone's picture, the detail is not as good as the Z Fold 6 is, and the cutout is even worse. You can see right here, like there's a part that's doesn't look like it's cut out properly, and also just the roll off is different. It's not necessarily bad, but it's different. Honestly, maybe the iPhone is just too close to actually focus on the subject, but I feel like the way that the carpet looks right here, it looks like her head could have been in focus if the iPhone just hit the image, which I think it missed. Like overall, she just looks less detailed. Obviously, the fur looks really bad. Her head is really dark at the tip of her nose right here, and yeah, overall the Z Fold 6 did a better job here. All right, so some other shots of Kusu. I know the angles are going to be pretty different, but in terms of details, the Z Fold 6 did a pretty good job right here. You can see some decent detail in her fur. Even going down here, it looks pretty good. You can see the shine of the cucumber that she was eating. Overall, I think the Z Fold 6 just did a pretty good job. The detail on the cucumber looks better on the iPhone, and the carpet is alright, but again, her fur is not hitting on the iPhone like significantly less detail. And I know the angle is different, so maybe that's why, but the Z Fold 6 definitely looks like it's doing a better job with the detail in her fur, especially right here under her ear. I feel like the detail is just hidden, and even like the little hairs going along the inside of her ear right there, pretty sick. Whereas on the iPhone, it's just blurry. It's not really in focus. Again, it could be the distance between the subject and the camera though, but yeah, overall I think the Z Fold 6 did a pretty good job. Now here's another photo of Kusu taken by the Z Fold 6, and I think it's pretty decent, but her head looks dark like the iPhone's image. But overall her fur looks pretty good, and this is pretty good considering the fact that, like, you know, bunnies, I feel like in my experience, all my bunnies that I've had, they're just really hard to capture on camera, and like very few phones can actually capture the detail in their fur, especially Kusu's fur, pretty well. So I think the Z Fold 6 is doing a pretty good job when you consider the fact that it's a bunny that's always moving. The nose is always going up and down, which is why the nose is never going to be sharp like on any of these phones usually. And yeah, she just always has little subtle movements that seems to mess up cameras, but Z Fold 6 is holding it down right now. So now we got my daughter in the lobby of a building, and she, you know, she's doing different things, so the angle is going to look different for both these phones. I think I wasn't able to take them at the same time, so I tried to recreate the shot. Obviously the angle is different, but you know, her moving around, and I think the Z Fold 6 did a pretty decent job. Like, you can see the texture of her shirt pretty clearly. The chips look decent from far away. Her face is alright. The sharpness of the image overall, like, because it's against like a very bright background and the lobby is not lit that well, I feel like it's not a bad photo at all when you consider the context and where it was taken. But again, you're gonna see the noise that Z Fold 6 often struggles with right here. Like, the noise is just throughout the photo, but you can see it in patches throughout the image, unfortunately. With the iPhone, it did pretty decent with her shirt. You know, she's moving around, so the motion right here caught the iPhone slipping, and it couldn't capture the detail. It seems like her forehead and like the baby hairs just are not good for the iPhone, and her eyelashes as well. Her whole face overall is just not really sharp with the movement that she was doing. The shirt is decent. The chips look decent as well. Overall, less noise in the image than the Z Fold 6. But yeah, pretty comparable images if you ask me. All right, so now we're in the grocery store. There is a lot of lighting in the grocery store, but it's not the best. And I don't think both these phones are at their highest potential in lighting like this, but I think they both did a pretty good job. You see the difference in the color science. This is the iPhone, this is the Z Fold 6. Z Fold 6 is gonna be, you know, more cool, and the highlights are more bright. There's less contrast and detail, because the iPhone just has a better camera overall, so it's gonna look more sharp and it's gonna look more social media ready versus the Z Fold 6. But I think overall it's pretty comparable images. They just have like a different philosophy when it comes to the processing of the image. The details are pretty good on both of them. I think the Z Fold 6 might even be a little bit sharper, but that could just be the sharpening that the processing does. And yeah, I would say here it's just a difference of like the look, but in terms of capturing the image, like capturing the subject properly, I think they both did a good job there. And then we have another shot, her looking at me while I'm taking the photo, and it's the same thing, you know, just a different look, but they both captured the subject pretty well. The iPhone is definitely going to be sharper and, you know, more separation from the subject and the background, because the iPhone has a bigger sensor than the Z Fold 6, so it's just going to look more closer to a normal camera. But at the end of the day, like, both good photos of my daughter, you know, capture the memory. And yeah, that's basically it. So now I'm just gonna let it roll of different images of my daughter, and, you know, let you be the judge of whether the Z Fold 6 can actually take pictures of kids and pets and animals in general. So let's go. Alright, so jumping back in, obviously with the zoom camera, it's not going to be the best. Like this Z Fold 6 has an okay zoom camera, you know, it's not at the level of the flagship phones, and that's just something that you have to expect. Although it can go a little bit further than the iPhone 15 Pro Max at 30x versus 25x, but the quality is you know, it's going to be watercolor. It's not going to look too sharp or nice, but the fact that you can zoom in is pretty nice. You know, it allows you to capture different things and see signs when you need to like navigate downtown or something like that in the city. And I think honestly the images could be better if the processing was different. Like they have like a weird kind of glowy effect around the subject, so I think, you know, if Samsung works that out, then maybe the zoom camera images would be better. But in general, when you're taking like 1x to 3x focal length images, I feel like animals outside look pretty good. Like for example, here we were at a petting zoo, you know, through the fence, and I think this is a 3x photo right here, and it just looks pretty good. Like it's pretty sharp, and it has decent detail, and you know, the sheep just looks pretty good when you're zoomed out. Obviously if you zoom in, it's not going to look the cleanest because again, it's a smaller sensor, wasn't the best lighting, and it's the zoom camera, which is a lower megapixel count than the main camera. Overall, I think pretty good image. And as we go further, this is a 1x shot of the enclosure of the bison, and I just want to show this photo because it gives context to the other photo that I'm gonna show right after it. But you can see there's a bison in there. He's kind of hiding, he don't want to come out, and you know, outside was brighter than in there, so obviously in there is gonna look really dark. But then when you zoom in, this is what it looks like. So you get the bison in more detail, and you know, it brightens up inside there. Of course, you can see even like the wall color, the stains on the wall, the detail, the lines, what's going on in there. So I think he did a pretty good job. You can see the feet of the bison, the horns, the matting of the hair, how it's like shedding or was shedding or whatever. And yeah, this is, I believe, at max zoom. And then yeah, we're gonna jump back into like, you know, taking pictures of my daughter outside in broad daylight. I know most phones nowadays can take good pictures in the daylight, but me personally, that's usually when I'm taking photos. I don't necessarily take that many photos in lowly lit situations, in dark situations or at night. Personally, I take photos in daylight because it just makes more sense to me in terms of like, you know, on the go and stuff like that. And I feel like things just look nicer in the day, in my opinion. So that's when I'm usually taking pictures. And yeah, I think this phone just performs really well. You're gonna see some images. You're gonna see some close-up images of my daughter outside. I think it just captures the details pretty nicely. The colors look good and just accurate to what I saw that day. And yeah. All these photos of my daughter, even in the ones where she's sitting down, she's still doing something, and the phone just was able to take a clear and good shot in most of these situations. So honestly, for me, I never feel like I need a Pixel. I never feel like I need an iPhone. I feel like the Z Fold 6's camera, and even with the Fold 5, I never had an issue either. But I feel like these cameras on the Samsung foldables are good enough. You know, of course, I want them to be better. Like, I would love to have S24 Ultra cameras on the Z Fold 6 or flagship cameras in general on this foldable form factor. But I think these cameras are good enough, and I feel like people are often blowing it out of proportions and, you know, making it seem worse than it actually is, and making it seem like you can't get good photos of kids and pets and stuff like that. And like, to be honest, like, I don't even really try with these images. All these images were point and shoot. I'm not setting up the shot. I'm not waiting for it to stop moving and all that stuff. Literally just pointing and shooting. And honestly, I feel like 98% of the images that I took were pretty good and in focus, and she looks sharp. She's not blurred out because of the motion. So yeah, I don't know. And to be honest, if I want a better shot, like, a lot of these images, I don't think they're good photos in terms of framing and like lining it up the shot and stuff like that, because I didn't really try. But if I want a good shot of my daughter, then I'll get a shot of my daughter with the Z Fold 6. Like, it's not a question. If I really want a good shot with this phone, I can do that no problem. So personally, I feel like this camera is adequate for taking pictures of moving subjects and in lowly lit situations of kids and pets and animals and stuff like that. I don't really have too many issues. So that's just my experience. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But until next video, we are out. Peace.